Today, this is going to be day one of our Bible study teaching. And we're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to work my way all the way through the Bible. I'm going to have a different, Bible study teaching plan each day for us to go over, and just some things we can take away from each chapter, from Genesis all the way to the end of Revelation. This teaching. So I'm praying that today that you guys are able to be helped. This teaching, just Bible study, teaching, helping us understand scripture better, helping us learning how to apply God's word into our lives, and just being better spiritually, being better as human beings, being better as children of God. That is the ultimate goal of this whole Bible study lesson plan that we're going to be going over today and for the foreseeable future. But to start, just gonna dive right into it, man. I'm praying that everybody is having a great day. I'm praying that everybody is blessed, that God is working in your life, that God is moving in your life. But let's get right into it. We're gonna start simple. Gonna start from the beginning, y'all. And again, this is day one of the creation. I have my Bible study notes here. I'll share a couple things off of here. I'll probably do most of my reading off of here after I read some scriptures. But we're going to dive right into it. So the theme overview for day one of our Bible study teaching is understanding God the Creator, and that God is creator of all things. Again, our theme overview for today's Bible study teaching God Bible study lesson is that understanding God the Creator, and that God is the creator of all things. That is going to be our goal for today's Bible study. Understanding God the Creator, and that God is the creator of all things. A key verse I want us to take away is at the very beginning. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." That is the key verse for this Bible study teaching. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And our learning objectives, of course, again, is understanding the identity of God. Understanding the identity of God. This is our Bible study teaching God for day one, the creation. And again, the theme overview is understanding God the Creator, and that God is creator of all things. So, teaching points. We're going to learn about how God has the power to create, how everything he creates has purpose and meaning behind it, and knowing that God does exist. This is our teaching points again for you, that for those of you who have just joined with. This is the Bible study teaching God for day one, the creation. And again, the theme overview is understanding God the Creator, and that God is the creator of all things. And our learning objective for today is understanding the identity of God. How you doing? Understanding the identity of God, and some teaching points that we're going to go over is that understanding is that God has the power to create. Everything he creates has purpose and meaning behind it, and God does exist. So we're going to start with Genesis 1, verses 1 through 5. And it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was an evening, and there was a morning one day." So what we can get from that in chapter 1 of Genesis, the first 5 verses of the Bible, we read that in the beginning God created. So we understand that God existed, and he was here before anything else was ever formed in this world. Before there was light, before there was day, before there was night, there was God. These words, "in the beginning God created," it's indication that God was present before anything ever existed. There was no earth, there was no grass, there was no sky. There wasn't anything. That was just God. It was just God himself. And so God was here in the beginning, and he's always going to be the one that it starts with when it comes to everything that we do in our lives. And that God, the biggest thing is that we got to understand God has the power to create. And everything he creates has purpose and meaning behind it. But the biggest thing from those small verses in those small verses in Genesis 1 through 5, it shows us that God does exist. So again, the biggest thing from those first couple of verses is that God does exist. God does exist. It says in the beginning, God created, letting us know that God is the creator of all things. But we're going to move on. Our second teaching point is point B. Everything God creates is good. It has meaning and purpose behind it. And we're going to read Genesis 1, verses 9 through 13. Again, our next teaching point is that everything God creates is good and it has meaning and purpose behind it. Verses 9 through 13. It says, Then God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the third day. So again, a teaching point that we can learn from this point B is that God is creator of all good things. When he created these the fruit, when he created this vegetation, when he created these different kind of trees and all these seeds, all of it was good. So we have to remember that everything God touches, everything that God creates is for our good. He doesn't create things that don't produce. That's what we have to understand. God does not create things that does not produce. When it comes to people, livestock, vegetation, land, animals, everything God produces fruit, whether that be through us, whether that be through everything you see in this world, everything God produces is good. So we need to understand that God has placed us here to produce good, because everything God does produce is good. I'm going to say that again. We have to understand that God has placed us here to produce good, because everything God produces is good. It says it in his word. It says, and God saw that it was good. Everything that he produced, God saw that it was good. So that's one important thing that we can take from point B of our teaching lesson right there, is that everything God creates is good. Now we're going to go to teaching point C. This is a big one that we have to remember. Point C, teaching point for this Bible study lesson, image of God. We have God's likeness. And we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 30 to learn more about that. We are created in the image of God, and we have God's likeness. So let's move on through 30, and let's see what God has to say. It says, Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth. God also said, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree whose fruit contains seed. This will be food for you, for all the wildlife of the earth, for every bird of the sky, and for every creature that crawls on the earth, everything having the breath of life in it. I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. One big thing that we have to understand is that God he gives us authority. He's given us authority over all things here on earth. When he says in his word, they will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. That is God giving us authority. That is God giving us the authority to be able to have control of all these things and produce good with them. So not only are we created in the image of God, but we have that same authority that God has. And I'm not saying we can't do the miracles and the work that God does, but we have that same. And so one thing I want us to take is that we have all the qualities and traits of God because we are made in the image of God and God's likeness. So note that we have all the qualities and traits of God. We were created to produce and create. We are to love like God. We are to forgive like God. We are to live like God. That is what I want us to take away from that last teaching point. Not only are we created in the image of God and we have God's likeness, but we have all of God's qualities and traits, which are his love, his forgiveness, and just living. And we're created to produce fruit. We were created to produce and create good fruit. So those are some important things that we can take away from that small segment, that small portion from Genesis chapter 1. Again, some of the teaching points that we went over was that understanding that God has the power to create, and everything he creates has purpose and meaning behind it, and knowing that God does exist. Teaching point B, everything God creates is good. It has meaning and purpose behind it. And then lastly, our last teaching point is that understanding that we are created in the image of God. We have God likeness. We have God's likeness. So some steps to apply before we go. I want you to always know and understand or to remember who God is. And for this, whenever you have time, write down 3 things that represent who God is. And then lastly, understanding that God is eternal. God is here forever. He's going to be here. He's been here since the beginning, and he's going to be here in the end. Understand that God is eternal. And then lastly, here are some questions to ask.